it's Jessi. Today I will be reviewing the First Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I'm actually really excited. I swear these aren't for me. I bought these as a gift for a friend and I just haven't mailed them yet. So they are very convenient props for this video, and I just have to make sure I don't upload this video before I mail this package. Anyway, the First Law Trilogy is a trilogy of books set in the First Law world. So there is a longer series by Joe Abercrombie that involves a short story collection, a few standalone novels, and this trilogy, and then I think there's another trilogy that just finished. I think the last book just came out this year. And this first trilogy follows several characters as they kind of navigate this war that is going on, and they each have kind of different perspectives of it. They each kind of have different perspectives. So you have Logan Ninefingers, who is a Northman that has come down because things kind of went weird for him at home. Then there is you have West, who is a soldier who is just trying to like scrape by. You have Giselle, who is also a soldier, but kind of a bit of a dandy. If I were to describe him, he kind of doesn't want responsibility. And then you have Glocta, who is an inquisitor, a torturer, who is kind of on the more political side of this war. And there's a lot that kind of happens, but it's not a plot-heavy series, so it's kind of hard to describe it. Like, there is a plot, there's this war, there's this conflict with the Northmen, and then there's another conflict with the Eaters, who are a whole other thing. And then the overarching, I think, conflict of the world is about this former, not god, magician, magic user that is kind of trying to come back, I think. This is really poorly explained because the plot of this is kind of thin. Alright, but let's get into my categories now that you know a little bit about what the series is about. So characters, you'll hear Abercrombie is a character writer. I gave his characters 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. They're not perfect in my opinion. I think they're beautifully written. I think they're great. I think though all of them kind of get a little shoehorned into this is their thing and this is how they work. I also think they regress a lot, which is fine. Like, I think you can do a negative character arc and it's fine. So you can have a character progress and then regress. And I think that's totally okay. I think some of the characters, though, never progress. In particular, I have some issues with Giselle and Glocta. I think while they are both well-rounded, fleshed-out characters, I think Giselle sometimes, his arc feels like there's no reason for him to be doing some of the things he does. Not that characters have to always have a reason, but like, sometimes he does things and it's like, wait, didn't we already go over this? Like, haven't we already talked about why you don't like this or why you shouldn't do this? And I think that bothers me. He seems to not really grow, ever. And same thing with Glocta. I don't think Glocta ever changes or learns anything. He just keeps doing things the way he does it. And I think that's, to be fair, I think that's kind of the point. Like, I think he is supposed to be a little set in his ways. It's just something I don't like. However, there's also some moments of just like fantastic twist with the characters where you'll see a character acting out a character and you're like, oh, that's weird, whatever. Maybe, you know, he decided to go a different direction. And then there's a point to it. And other characters where their change is just so gradual, and then you get to a point and you're like, wait a minute. He would have never done that in book 1, but I know why he's doing it. So it's really, I think, interesting and well done. The progression of certain characters. I think there's just some characters that are maybe not quite there. Moving on to the plot, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Like I said, the plot here is kind of thin. The first book, does it have a plot? It does. The first book does that whole thing where the characters aren't even interacting and you're like, what does this story have to do with that story? And then the second book, they kind of get drawn together a little more, and then by the third book, they're kind of all in the same area, or at least you can see how one story impacts the other story. But that plot, like I said, I couldn't even like surmise it for you at the beginning, because it's like, well, there's a war and there's conflict and, you know, there isn't like a clear plot, which is fine. I will not say it's as plotless as people make it out to be. So when you watch a lot of reviews for the Blade itself, they're like, there's no story, you're just there for the characters. And I don't think it's quite that bad. I think there is a story. Each of the characters are going through a story. You have, you know, Logan is traveling. And Giselle has this whole tournament arc he's working his way through, and West is helping him, and West is dealing with some other things. Plus Giselle has this whole romance he's balancing. And you have Glocta's like dealing with like this pressure from the government and this political plotline. So there is story there. It's not completely devoid of story. However, it's really hard to see how the storylines interweave until like halfway through the second book. Moving on to the setting, again, 7 out of 10. I just didn't think there was anything particularly special about this setting. It's not bad. Like, I'm not, like, 7 is good. 7 is fine. It's better than fine. But this setting didn't, like, leave me with anything fantastic. I couldn't tell you much about it other than the Northmen are very violent and ruled by strength. That's it. That's all I could tell you. I couldn't tell you much about this setting, so it's not bad. It's just nothing particularly wowing or special. My general appeal for this series was an 8 out of 10. Again, this is just my general opinion. If I were to rate this series the way I used to rate things, it would get 4 stars. That's what that means. Rating style, 9 out of 10. Joe Abercrombie writes beautifully. Most of the time. But he does this thing where he repeats phrases. And some of it's intentional. You know, say one thing for Logan Nine Fingers, and that's fine. Because it's intentional. And you can tell it's intentional, and it's cute. But then there's moments it's not intentional. And it's like, dude, why are you using this phrase? I'm not even kidding. If I ever read the phrase struggled manfully with his bowels one more time, I will die. Like, I will simply perish. So like, there's those moments, but like, other than that, other than struggled manfully with literally anything, he uses struggled manfully way too much. Like, who uses manfully as an adverb anyway? But specifically struggling manfully with his bowels to be like, you know, he was trying not to poop himself. Like, dude, I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, that phrase does not need to be repeated. And I was talking to a friend about it, and he was like, well, you know, he does that with like perspectives, so like you can say it. And I was like, no, this was in 3 different perspectives. Like, oh, Abercrombie buddy, Joe, hun, no one needs to struggle manfully with anything anymore. And the originality here, 9 out of 10. Now, maybe this is just because I don't read a lot of political fantasy. Maybe it's just because I don't read a lot of grimdark, but this to me was pretty unique and interesting. I enjoyed it. Had a good time. I think it's kind of something I haven't quite seen before, the different combination of things. Abercrombie does some things like, man, the anti-climaxes. Don't get a lot of those. So I think he does some things that I think are unique and interesting, so I really like that. Going on to the ending, I include ending in my rating because to me an ending is really important. If you don't stick the landing on a story, it doesn't matter how good the story was because it's kind of meh at the end. If you don't want to hear anything about the ending, I'm not going to give specific spoilers, but if you don't want to hear anything, go ahead, skip to my little summarization at the end. I understand, but this is just kind of to set your expectations. Yawn? Alright, I gave the ending a 6 out of 10. Which is still above average, like 5, 6 is average. So it's on the higher end of average. There were some things at the end. So like, it's getting to the end and I was really liking it. There were some things towards the end that were like some really great twists, some really good reveals, some, is this true, isn't this true? And if it had ended there, I think I would have been okay. But then it keeps going. And not in it keeps going in a Stephen King kind of way. Like there was definitely like room for the story to keep going. It's not like, this was the climax, everything's resolved, why is this still going? It wasn't that kind of end. It was, here's where it could have ended and I would have been happy. And then I kept going. And there was specifically one thing. And I feel like I'm maybe making too big of a deal out of this because I don't see a lot of other people complaining about it. When I brought it up to some friends, they were like, I don't even remember that. And I was like, And I like specifically ended up like spoiler marking in a Discord server and asking somebody, I was like, look, just spoil for me. Does this get handled well in the future? Because I'm super uncomfortable right now. And the answer was kind of iffy. And it just really brought the whole thing down for me because I don't see where it was necessary. It makes me uncomfortable, and it just kind of... The handling of women in the series as a whole is kind of iffy at times. A lot of the women are motivated only by their trauma, specifically sexual trauma in a lot of cases, and that's a little rough. And I hear that Abercrombie gets better in the future as far as that goes. So that's kind of what I'm hoping with this. And alright, it's big spoiler warning for the end of Last Argument of Kings. I'll hold the book up while I talk about it, and when the book's gone, you can come back. At the end of this, Giselle is king, right? And he marries the jewel of whatever it is, whatever her name is, that princess, because Jewel of Talons. Because she was the one betrothed to... How do people hold books without covering them? Anyway. Because she was betrothed. And she's not sleeping with him because she seems disgusted by him, and that's what she acts like. And then come to find out, Glocta goes and talks to her, and come to find out she's a lesbian. So it's not that she's disgusted by him because he was a commoner or because he was a bastard or any of those things. She's just a lesbian. She doesn't want to sleep with any guy, not just specifically Giselle. And then Glocta blackmails her into having sex with Giselle anyway. Here's the many layers of why that makes me uncomfortable. You have literally one sexual minority of a character, one lesbian character, and you're gonna shoehorn her into this plot line where she has to have sex with a man. 2, you're forcing her to be raped by Giselle, and Giselle's not even aware of it. So there's this like very uncomfortable, awful feeling about that, where it's like she's gonna hold it over him, or theoretically should, and he's not even aware of it. So you have like, he's literally raping somebody without knowing it. And that's super uncomfortable. And I don't think it's fair to put him through that either. And it's just, the layers of this just were like, why is this necessary? You literally could have had her not be a lesbian. You literally could have, I don't know, figured something out about him, like, well, I mean, at the end, doesn't he knock up West's sister at the end? So why don't they just raise her and have her, have that kid pretend like that kid is the Jules child? Like, there were so many other options for how that could have gone. It didn't need to go there. It really, really didn't. And it just makes me really uncomfortable. And so I actually asked a friend about it. I was like, hey, how does this get resolved? Does it get handled well? Because I'm not opposed to having sexual assault or rape in a book if it gets handled well. And the fact that this was so close to the end so that it wasn't handled at all in this book was like, And then he said that the next one is there's a huge time skip and it's barely addressed. And I'm like, all right, Abercrombie, can we even talk about how to handle sexual trauma in your books? Because that ain't it, buddy. So yeah, that's where my concern at the end comes in. All that to say that overall, I liked this series. I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was fantastic. I wish I had liked it a little bit more because it's one of my best friend's favorites. But that's okay, because I do think I'm gonna go on with it. I'm a little uncomfortable with some elements that I'm hoping get better as it goes on. I've been told Abercrombie writes women much better as he goes on, which is exciting for me. But overall, this series got an 8 out of 10, which is great. That's a good rating. 4 stars, amazing. There's some things I think could use some work, and I also think this is one of those series that maybe just won't be for me, but I'm gonna keep going with it. After I read some more Elderling, I will get back to First Law, so that's where that is. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of the First Law if you've read it, if you're interested in reading the First Law. Spoiler warn if you're going to talk about spoilers, but if you did watch that bit at the end and have anything to say about that, please feel free to try to comfort me or warn me. And yeah, just make sure you mark your spoilers in the comments. And that's it from me. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.